Good morning, good evening. Welcome everyone to this memorial meeting to celebrate the life and the legacy of Michael Burawoy, our master of France or compass. This event is co-hosted by the International Sociological Association and the American Sociological Association. Michael acted as president of both associations and dedicated so much energy and time to the task. Strengthening the collaboration between the ASA and ISA was one of our topics in our regular conversations. So it is not casual that today he's the one bringing us together here and bringing so many members of our two organizations together. I would like to thank the president of the ASA, Edia Wingfield, who can unfortunately not join us tonight, and Heather Washington, the executive secretary, for this fruitful conversation. I hope it will be the first one of a long series. I would like also to thank the ASA and ISA staff, in particular Cecilia Delgado and Anna Maria Wagner, who made it possible for us to meet today in such a short period of time. They were able to set this meeting. Thank you very much. And of course, I would like to welcome you all, and particularly Michael's family. Thank them for joining us tonight. I would like to tell them that we share the grief, that we know that Michael was not only an extraordinary sociologist, he was also, and I would say first and foremost, a wonderful human being. I would like to tell them how we feel. We all feel devastated. The whole international community of sociologists that Michael has forged in Berkeley, in the US, in the ISA, and with each of his travels and encounters around the world, everyone is shocked. We can't believe the news. I would like to thank all the audience for joining us today on such a short notice. ISA and ASA, we have received hundreds of emails and messages by colleagues who knew Michael very well, who considered him as a close friend. Every participant in this meeting has been impacted by Michael as a sociologist and as a person. It was just impossible to accommodate a space for everyone who had something meaningful, important to share about Michael, and because he had so many friends all over the world. Today, 12 close colleagues have accepted to share a few words. There will be other tributes at ISA, notably our forum, and at ASA for sure. But we may be able afterwards to open the floor to some participants. In the meanwhile, I would like to invite all the participants to share your anecdotes, memories, and highlights of how Michael's sociological work has influenced you in the chat of this Zoom meeting or as comment on the YouTube broadcast. And please, if you write something, include your name and your country. We will collect and publish it. We will publish all testimonies as part of these tributes on the ISA website. And today is obviously not a regular academic tribute. Just too early. We are sad, we are devastated. But we feel the need to come together today because Michael was not just a famous sociologist. He was an extraordinary person and colleague. He was also our compass. He reminded us why sociology matters in our times and why this was devoting so much time and energy to doing and teaching sociology. As he said just a year ago in Miami, sociology helps students understand how society is collective, the role of race, of class, of gender. Sociology is a scientific study of inequality and the oppression this entails. We study exclusions not to advance them, but to recognize and publicize them and to better understand how they can be contested and reversed. So when you get depressed about the world today, that is not going toward a direction we thought a few years ago. It's not heading precisely towards social justice we would like to see. When you wonder if sociology remains useful at a time when fake news spread on social media seems to have more impact than a solid, established study, read Michael's book and his articles, listen to his recordings, and read and reread his discourses. This is the way we can always find hope and see how sociology is useful, how sociology matters today. Michael left us at a time when we most need him, we most needed his leadership, his work, his example as an excellent teacher, his rigorous sociological analysis based on non-strong ethnographic fieldwork, his faith in relevant public sociology, his openness to a truly global dialogue, his quest for social and epistemological justice, his struggle for peace and justice, particularly in Palestine, but all over the world, his unique energy, commitment, and enthusiasm. And today, we particularly miss his smile, his kindness, his generosity. The American and the international community of sociologists is in shock. How can we cope with such a sudden loss? At ISA and ISA, we know that in Berkeley and traveling around the world, Michael has built this international community of sociologists who share his conviction that sociology should be both rigorous and useful for citizens and civil society. This community gathers today. We are mourning. We are also celebrating his life and his work. And I'd like to thank very much the 12 speakers who have accepted to share a few words to celebrate Michael's life and work in this first memorial meeting. It is far too early for an analysis of his immense legacy. We are in shock, we are mourning. We gather to celebrate him as we can and to share our emotion today. Each of these speakers has a close friendship with Michael. I'd like to thank them very much for finding the energy and the courage to share some words about the inspiring sociologist and extraordinary friend Michael was. So, before introducing the first speaker, allow me just to share the apologies of two important participants who could not join us today, in spite of their best efforts. Lydia Wingfield to present the ASA and Michel Vorka, former president of ISA. For now, you can read the list of speakers on the chat, and I would like to first give the floor to Professor Raka Ray, the Dean of the Division of Social Sciences at UC Berkeley, where Michael was a professor for 47 years.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make my remarks are going to be a little personal. When I arrived at Berkeley as a young assistant professor in 1993, Michael became my mentor. I rather think he inherited care of me from my advisor, Eric Olin Wright, who was his closest friend. I learned to love Berkeley through Michael's eyes. I learned what it meant to teach, to mentor, to do research seriously, and above all, what devotion to one's calling looks like. What I saw for the over 30 years that I was Michael's friend was a scholar who consistently transformed every intellectual field he touched, from labor to ethnography and from the task of sociology to theory. I saw a teacher who knew the names of all 200 students in his undergraduate class. In a class of 200 students, Michael saw me, they said. I saw an advisor who grumbled about, adored, suffered over, and shaped his over 80 PhD students. An institution builder who sought to democratize every organization he headed, from the ASA to the ISA. A tireless warrior for justice who in every aspect of his life consistently and fearlessly challenged the powerful on behalf of the powerless. A scholar who constantly reinvented himself and delighted in learning from his new young colleagues. And above all, I saw a man who was on the one hand deeply private, but whose generosity, intellectual and material, to students, colleagues, and friends was unmatched. When the unacceptable news of his death slowly began to sink in, I wanted to shout out the first line of Auden's poem, "Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone." For surely the world could not just keep on going without Michael in it. Could it? How could it? The poem goes on to say, "He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest." I'm not going to say that about Michael, and he never rested in any case. But I will say this. Michael was my North Star. I always knew that if I stuck with Michael's principles and its deeply moral and political core, or at least tried to follow that path, I would not lose my way, not in the department, not in the university, and not in the world. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Professor Ray. The floor is now to Saria Nafi, the former ISA president and professor at the University of Beirut. Sari, are you over here?
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, and I would like to make also a personal statement. Michael, you are gone, and yet you are everywhere. Only 3 weeks ago, we spent a day together in Cambridge, speaking of Gaza and Syria, of struggles that animated your restless mind. The day before you left us, we exchanged emails about a statement supporting BDS, a cause you carried with conviction, hoping to rally former presidents of ISA to push the current executive committee toward courage. You were never just a scholar, never merely an academic voice in the wilderness. You were a guide, a force, a mentor, and a friend. You wrote a beautiful preface for my forthcoming book, Against Symbolic Liberalism, a plea for dialogical sociology. When you saw my cautiously optimistic position on Syria, you wanted to add a paragraph on how I put my dialogical sociology into practice. You believed always that theory must breathe, that it must find its way into the fabric of lived experience. In 2013, I invited you to give a lecture in Amman and 2 more in Palestine. As we approached the bridge connecting Jordan to the West Bank, I pleaded with you not to let the Israeli authorities know we were traveling together. I had already been denied entry before. You believed that, as a British Jew, you had full immunity against such ban. After much persuasion, we agreed to separate at the border. I walked up to one booth and you to another right beside mine. The officer asked me where I was headed, and I told her I would be in Jerusalem. As she was filling out my details, I overheard the officer at your booth ask, "Is this your first visit to Israel?" Without hesitation and with remarkable calm, you responded, "Yes, this is my first visit to Palestine." I remember vividly how she looked at you, stunned, as if she hadn't heard correctly. She repeated the question, and again, with unwavering steadiness, you replied, "Yes, to Palestine, because I'm going to Ramallah. Don't you consider Ramallah part of the Palestinian territory?" Here, her face flushed with anger, her voice sharpened. "I will ask you this question one last time. Is this your first visit to Israel?" I turned to you, bleeding silently, hoping you would not provoke her further. I feared they might deny your entry, but my anxious glance didn't go unnoticed. The officer handing my passport caught me looking to your direction. She frowned and asked, "So you are going to Ramallah too? Why did you lie?" Having Damascus as my birthplace, I knew I was in for a very special treatment. Michael, do you remember you were furious, ending up waiting over 3 hours? But You remember, despite everything, how wonderful this journey was. I rented a car to show you my parents' birthplace in Haifa, and we wandered through the streets of Acre, where you ate your favorite meal, falafel, in the old city. Everything felt perfect except for the apartheid wall, choking Palestinian villages and towns like a noose tightening around their necks. I saw how it affected you, how you fell into a long silence, your gaze fixed on the grey concrete, cutting through lands and memory alike. Your ideas don't die. I grieve this immense loss, but I don't say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Sari. And now the floor is to Nazanin Sharokny, who is a professor at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver and a former student of Michael.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Hello, everyone. I'm going to read because I don't think I can hold my tears back. Michael Burawoy was more than a sociologist. He was a craftsman of the discipline, shaping it into a practice that interrogates power, centers the margins, and bridges theory with action. Although occupying a central place in academia, he embraced the discomfort of decentering himself constantly. He insisted on restructuring the canon, foregrounding Du Bois, feminist thought, and global South epistemologies. Sociology's center, he believed, must shift towards the margins, not as charity, but as necessity. Michael didn't just study the margins, he inhabited them, always reaching outward and downward into communities, workplaces, and spaces of precarity. Michael Burawoy saw his students as intellectuals in their own right, embracing them as teachers as much as learners. He didn't offer ready-made lenses, but created the conditions for us to develop our own. For him, the classroom was a laboratory of social transformation, where ideas were fiercely debated, yet generously shared. He offered something far more powerful than academic guidance. He showed that our struggles, personal struggles, weren't just problems to solve, but entry points into deeper sociological inquiry. A friend wrote that Michael was our North Star, and without him, we are lost. But he left us not just a path to follow, but tools to build our own. He fostered not a community of followers, not a school of thought centered on himself, but a network of independent thinkers. He knew that intellectual dependency, fraught with power dynamics, makes us vulnerable. We're not lost, we are equipped. Michael extended the same respect and appreciation to scholars in the global South. This was evident in his 2008 visit to Iran, which I had the privilege of organizing and joining. Where others saw a country to be avoided, a pariah state, he saw intellectual possibility. He refused to let geopolitical narratives, visa restrictions, or repression dictate where he could go or who he could engage with. His visit wasn't just defiance, but a commitment to transnational dialogue. Iranian sociology, under state scrutiny and international sanctions, faced isolation, and Michael worked to ensure its scholars remained part of the global conversation. If they cannot come to us, he insisted, we must go to them. He recognized that while the term public sociology might be new, this practice was already deeply embedded in the lived realities of Iranian scholars. In Iran, Michael's role as an empathetic interlocutor coexisted with the unrelenting pull of the consummate ethnographer within him. Instead of confining himself to Tehran's comfortable enclaves, he ventured beyond its elite spaces, opting to ride buses and trains to visit Iran's other cities and connect with people. We laughed as we reminded him, Michael, you don't speak a word of Farsi. Yet language proved no barrier. Michael had an uncanny ability to inhabit spaces, absorbing and reflecting the textures of local life. Whether chatting with a bus driver, haggling with a vendor, or exchanging ideas with university professors, he broke through every wall with his genuine curiosity, incisive wit, and a smile that needed no translation. He moved seamlessly between the intimate and the structural, discerning the specificity of place and the universality of struggle. That was Michael. A principal sociologist, He didn't just study social struggles, he joined them. From Palestine to Occupy Oakland, anti-apartheid movements to graduate student labor rights, he stood on the front lines. His most powerful lectures were on picket lines and at teach-ins, where theory met action. Yet amid all the complexities and struggles he dissected, Michael always held on to hope. During the turbulent days of Iran's Green Movement in 2009, I wrote to Michael about the uncertainty clouding the future. He replied, "I'm glad there is still so much uncertainty about tomorrow. As in South Africa, even in the darkest days, nothing could stop day-to-day politics, and with politics came hope. At a time when the world feels increasingly closed off and alternative futures seem constrained, his insistence on hope and the link between sociological imagination and political imagination remains more vital than ever." I love you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazanin. Next speaker is Michael Williams from South Africa, the chair of the Department of Sociology at the University of Witwatersrand.
Thank you. So I first want to thank Jeffrey and the ISA and ASA leadership for organizing this today. Truth be told, I didn't want to speak and I almost said no because I'm too devastated like everyone else. But my partner Vish Satgar reminded me that Michael would do it for all of us. So Michael poured his heart and soul into the ISA and the ASA and to Berkeley Sociology, to Berkeley in general, creating a community of engaged, critical, and committed sociologists around the world. So it is through Michael that I take courage to speak today, and mine are a bit personal as well. As we all try to come to terms with the inconsolable pain of Michael leaving us, something I don't think any of us ever really imagined. In fact, in October 2024, when he was visiting us in South Africa, I told him that he had to take care of his health as I couldn't handle losing him. He assured me he was not going anywhere. But life is forever uncertain and at times cruel and unjust. Michael was deeply committed to sociology, to the global South, and to global sociology. What many people may not know is that Michael became a sociologist through his time in Zambia and South Africa. He was a brilliant undergraduate student studying mathematics at Cambridge University, but a restless soul who wanted to see a better world. So in the summer of 1966, he hitchhiked across the African continent and spent his first winter for us in Johannesburg. On this trip, he became interested in education as a means of social transformation. And in 1968, after graduating with his maths degree, he returned to Johannesburg and then moved to newly independent Zambia. And after a few months, he registered to do his MA in sociology and worked on the copper mines. So it was his time in the post-colony that shaped him into becoming a sociologist. It introduced him to Marxism with a strong African inflection, and it made him deeply committed to sociology. And it's where he began his ethnography, his tradition of ethnography. So his commitment to a critical and engaged sociology around the world was born out of his learning sociology in Africa, and he remained tied to the continent throughout his life as he did to the global South in general. Michael was also a brilliant and dedicated teacher and a PhD supervisor, but one of his most amazing qualities was the ability to make us all feel incredibly special. At his retirement celebration in Berkeley 2023, he chose to have the two-day event focused on his PhD students, and about 55 of his 80 PhD students were there. And one of his advisees, Ofer Sharon, captured it brilliantly when he said the event was both amazing but also unsettling for him, as he always thought that he had a relationship with Michael that was unique. And the event showed him that every single one of us had an equally special relationship with Michael. But I think that was part of Michael's grand plan, to create a community of care and deep bonds among his students and consequently progressive sociologists who were engaged and cared about the world. Another supervisee, Cinzia Solari, described it aptly when she said that Michael's biggest gift that he gave to us as his students was each other. I think that is exactly what he did globally as well. Everyone he met and interacted with around the world felt they had something special with him because he made us all feel that way. Don't get me wrong, as a supervisor, he was also tough, brutally honest, demanding, cranky with us if we didn't rise to his expectation, but it was always done with love. So this community that the ISA and ASA represent, the global sociology community, is what Michael helped build for us. He believed sociology had an important role to play in making the world a better place, and he believed in all of us, in sociologists around the world. Michael dedicated his life to this, and it was a journey he was on with us, but has left us abruptly to carry on. Michael, we will try to continue your work. It will be hard to do without you leading us, but we promise we will try. We promise.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's really impressive to see how Michael had so many friends all over the world, as you said, and we see it every day at the ISA to receive so many messages from people who are really close to him, and it was just incredible. So now I'll give the floor to Isabella Balinska, the ISA Executive Secretary for 40 years, including during Michael Rohr's time, and they worked so closely together. Thank you, Isabella, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, it is now 19 years since Michael joined. He became vice president of the ISA and then the president. One of the first things he organized was a big conference of national associations on a very significant, highly significant theme, facing an unequal world, challenges for sociology. And inequalities became a leitmotif of his activities in the ISA, as far as I could see. I had a great privilege to work with him in all those years, and could see that all the following projects initiated by Michael when he was already the president were meant to open up and invite as many sociologists worldwide as possible to participate openly in ISA. There were projects like interviews, journeys for sociology, global courses, social tube, a blog, University in Crisis, because this is what was happening then in the world, and probably the most popular now and carrying on the magazine, Global Dialogue, published in 14 languages. But not to forget about the database for PhD students' abstracts, the wonderful initiative, because as you already mentioned, Michael's love for students was endless. But maybe I would like to use this moment to share what was that unique experience to work with such a charismatic person as Michael for all those years on an everyday basis. He became a dear friend of the entire ISC Secretariat team in Madrid. The time difference between Berkeley and Madrid, Spain didn't matter, because we are all so enthusiastic and passionate about the projects, which we would develop jointly. The idea would come, many ideas would come from Michael, obviously, but there was also some things which we could see working on the administrative level of the ISA. And the pleasure of developing them and thinking about the audience, sociologists worldwide, was absolutely fascinating. He was not a boss. He was a colleague. He was a friend, an intellectual stimulation. There was mutual trust. Well, I would say love, let's say, first sight from everybody in the Secretariat. We shared success, we shared failures. We went through difficult years, also in the ISA, with the financial crisis, with the company which ran the registration, which went bankrupt, which the venue for the big conference, which was not available, and so on and so on. But Michael was Michael, and his smile was everywhere, and the positive spirit would let us carry on. So I thank you, Michael, for all that, and extraordinary privilege to be able to work with you for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. It was really a privilege to work and to spend time with Michael, for sure. Our next speaker is Margaret Abraham, former ISA president and a successor. She works as a vice president for National Association with Michael as a president, and then she became his successor. Margaret, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, and hello to all of you. My condolences to Michael's family, and thank you to all for who have already spoken. It's hard to grapple with Michael Burawoy's untimely and tragic death. Many of you around the world have incredible and inspiring stories to share about Michael, about his huge impact on sociology and on students, colleagues, professional associations, educational institutions, unions, family, friends, and on our individual lives. Michael Burawoy's brilliance, boldness, boundless energy, and commitment to equality, fairness, and social justice came through day in and day out in what he wrote, how he spoke, and what he did. He truly exemplified what it means to help advance a discipline, to actively engage, including by taking on key leadership roles in professional associations such as ASA and ISA, but also by his continuous commitment to reflect and resituate sociology to meet the disciplinary and societal challenges of our time. Michael always sought ways to break down hierarchies and promote scholars from around the world, especially emerging sociologists. He sought to have them showcase their own work and offered incredible support in opening pathways, especially for those marginalized and excluded. He was never afraid to challenge the status quo. This great sociological sojourner spoke truth to power through his brilliant writings, rigorous analysis, eloquent and sharp presentations, asking critical questions, always open to debate and dialogue, to critique, and having the very rare skill of intensely listening. He continued to be persistent, passionate, and persuasive about the promise of sociology for a better, equal, and more peaceful world. In my recent communication with Michael just a few days ago, we discussed the state of the world. He, in his usual insightful way, noted, I quote, "Strange world we live in, both so connected and so disconnected," unquote. However, the optimist in him remained hopeful, and he emphasized the importance of effort in our struggles for justice. He said, and I quote, "The effort is more important than the success." Michael had a beautiful way with words, engaging in ways that epitomize the humanist he was. This is not the place nor time to speak in depth about the magnitude of his contributions, nor to adequately express my gratitude for who he was to me and to so many of us across the globe. There will be other times and places, I'm sure. Instead, I would like to end by sharing a few lines from the poem When Great Trees Fall, written by the acclaimed and world-renowned American poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. I find the words very meaningful and powerful, and I hope this poem resonates with many of us as we come together to mourn and to celebrate Michael Burawoy's life and legacy. When great trees fall, great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. This is beautiful. Now the floor is to Sujata Patel, distinguished Indian sociologist from the University of Hyderabad and former vice president of the ISA.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of this tribute. And I would like to extend my condolences to all of you, because Michael's unexpected passing away has affected us all and shocked us, and it has been devastating for all of us. I first met Michael in Johannesburg, and this is the time when he used to go often to the labor to meet Eddie Webster and engage with the department to be able to understand sociology and labor studies together. And as we know, this is the site on which he constituted his very incisive work for an understanding of new way to think of sociology. This brief meeting was followed by a longer interaction when he invited some of us from the Global South to join the ASA's San Francisco conference in 2004. And this is when he got ASA to open out to different regional panels from across the world and share with them another vision for sociology. Many of you who participated in this conference in 2004 may recall his passionate and electrifying presidential address on the project of public sociology at this conference. There is much to say about Michael, and it's very difficult for me to put it in words at this moment. But I would like to constrict myself to one matter, which I think is very significant to understand about Michael's activism, scholarship, and persona. Like all Marxist scholars, Michael was interested in understanding the nature of inequalities, marginalization, and exclusions that emerge within the capitalist system. But what distinguished Michael's Marxist scholarship from many of his contemporary Marxists was the use of ethnographic stance, both as a methodology and as a method to comprehend inequalities and the class experience. In order to grasp what it means to be exploited, or being deprived, or being disadvantaged, Michael immersed himself in factory sites in different parts of the world and presented to us a thick description on the nature of work, on labor, and struggles of survival within factory sites. Similarly, I'm of the opinion that the ethnographic stance was used to comprehend the practices within the discipline of sociology and to frame new attributes to make it an engaged social science, which he termed public sociology. He participated and urged us to participate in protests and demonstrations, in strikes and lockouts, in dissenting campaigns and rallies, and within social movements in order to bring these issues and concerns for discussion and debate within the classroom and in defining research projects and its questions. In the process, and I think this is, for me, his major contribution, Michael turned around a 19th century method of ethnography which studied small groups and was particularistic in its orientation and non-generalizable into a sociological methodology that eschewed the particular and the local and promoted an assessment of the micro as being located within the meso and the macro. He called this an extended case study method, which brings theory to bear to the particular case and makes it ask macro-level questions that need to be examined, making the world the site for doing fieldwork. I think that the uniqueness of Michael's scholarship is in the way he combined the scientificity of his work with the political agenda so that there is no difference between the two. And this, I think, is not only his major contribution, but in this way, he destroyed the distance that has always occurred between the sociologist and the people who are being studied. For he created the conditions for an exchange of knowledge and perspectives which is participative in the fullest meaning of the word, while simultaneously eschewing objectification and instrumentalization of the groups being studied. This is what I learned from Michael over the last 2 decades since I met him and engaged with his scholarship and conversed with many of his ideas. And I think it is difficult at this time to state more at a personal level, but I would like to say goodbye, Michael, and we miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujata Fortisiko from India. Thank you for joining us so late at night. Our next speakers are Mara Roverman, former chair of the Sociology department at the UC Berkeley.
Hello, everyone. I had the extraordinary good fortune to be Michael's colleague and friend and former chair in his home department of sociology at UC Berkeley. Like so many others, my whole being is still struggling to absorb the reality that we are now in the world that we are in without Michael Burawoy here with us. Waking up, things look bleak, and the grief is just enormous. It weighs heavily. In this context of shared mourning and commemorating today, still only a few days after his death, I find that the part of Michael's contribution to sociology and to the world that I'm most compelled to speak about is his teaching. And what I share comes from my experience, not as a former student, but as his colleague. Michael loved teaching with all of his heart, and he taught with all of his might. He often said that teaching was a privilege. He engaged in teaching as a responsibility, even an existential mission. Teaching was integral to who Michael was as a scholar, a writer, a speaker, an activist, a human being. I think teaching is what made Michael the sociologist that he was. And I also think that Michael's sociology deeply shaped the kind of teacher that he was. Michael never let us forget that teaching is at once a social relation between human beings and a labor relation between worker and employer, especially in the context of the neoliberal university. Michael worked and played with this tension in different ways in different moments. Whenever there was a labor action here, and we have them pretty regularly, he refused the question, do I cancel class or do I cross the picket line? Michael never canceled class. He brought his classes to the picket line. I think the way Michael engaged with students embodied his determination to defend the classroom as a space where human relationships can prevail. Raka mentioned one small example of this, that he would know the names of every single student in his huge undergraduate theory courses by the second week of class. Michael's teaching made individual students feel seen and valued as individuals who had something unique and important to contribute to building a better world. He also created conditions for them to build genuine intellectual and human communities. And he did this for his colleagues and for staff members in the department too, making each of us feel special and fostering our community through a sense of shared purpose in the radical pedagogical mission of Berkeley as a public university in the state of California. Another small example. For many, many years, Michael gave the closing speech at our department's graduation ceremony. Michael would pause at one point in his remarks and ask all the students who were the first in their families to graduate from university to stand up. Then he would ask them to turn around and face their families and friends in the packed auditorium. From the perspective of us faculty members sitting up on the stage in a row in our ridiculous robes, what we got to see was the faces of all the parents and family members and friends of the standing graduates beaming back at their graduating students with so much pride. These were the moments that I felt most proud to be a professor of sociology, a teacher, part of the collective political project to defend and sustain the public university as a space and set of relations and conditions where it's still possible to nurture the cultivation of good sense, to help sow seeds for a more socially just world. One final thing I want to share about Michael's approach to teaching that I loved was that he was always so open, so curious, so eager to learn from others, and also just so game. I mean, you'd run a half-baked idea by Michael on a whim, and he'd be like, okie dokie, let's give it a try. And one time when I was department chair, this idea was to take the first year cohort of graduate students for just a little hike. Next thing I knew, I'm in a rented van with 14 seats, picking up Michael, who's ready to go in his black Adidas tracksuit, and heading across the Richmond Bridge to his favorite trailhead in Point Reyes. We carried a load of unsuspecting students who were about to be embarked on a 14-kilometer trek out and back to the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I'm pretty sure several of those students swore off hiking forever after that. But it was a good day, and we fed them ice cream on the way home. And that happiest of memories brings me back to my grief, that enormous, heavy grief I named just a minute ago. My colleague and friend, Dylan Riley, reminded me that grief feels heavy because grief is not only sorrow for what is lost. Grief weighs because it's a responsibility for what remains. Here at Berkeley, we feel a responsibility to carry forward Michael Burawoy's work on so many fronts. He left way too soon, and there is so much work that is unfinished. And as I think about gearing up to rejoin the struggle, I'm inspired by Michael's teaching as a pillar of his life's work, starting with the way that he practiced teaching as resistance against all the pressures that would diminish and devalue our genuine connections with each other and with the world. Right now, today, the weight still feels really heavy, but I'm hoping that with practice, we will learn how to carry this weight more lightly and even with good humor, as Michael Burawoy always did. And as I think about and look at the names and the faces of all the extraordinary human beings here and across the globe who are knit together at this moment through our connections and our ongoing conversations with Michael Burawoy, I think we will make a good try of it at the very least. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mara. Speakers I see tears, of course, but also smiles. And it is true, we could not have a tribute to Michael without smiles and without his energy. And thank you all for transmitting this energy. Mara spoke about the legacy at Berkeley. Let me tell you about one of the main legacy of Michael for the ISA, which is Global Dialogue, the Journal for Public Sociology he founded. And just to announce you that the editors will publish a special issue, the next one, dedicated to Michael. And this is the opportunity for me to thank the 3 editors of Global Dialogue who followed Michael and took good care of the journal he founded. Klaus Dorer, Birgit Auenbacher, and the current editor Brennan Brigel, who could not join us tonight. But you all know that to follow up on Michael, on such a dynamic, fantastic sociologist with all his work, is definitely not an easy task, and these three persons definitely deserve our gratitude, because thanks to them, the global dialogue is still so lively. Just one more word to tell you also that ISA has opened the access to the contributions of Michael in current sociology, and especially to his presidential discourse. It was so important. And so for all of you who haven't read it yet, please have a look at it. And now I would like to just check if Arish Sabak, who should join us at the end of this meeting. Which is,
sorry, Jeffrey.
Yes?
Arish was in demonstration inside of Israel, and she has a problem of connection so far.
Okay.
So I mean, if she can do it, this will be great.
Hi,
Otherwise,
Kari.
yeah,
I'm
hi,
sorry to
hi.
interrupt.
Just in time.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
I'll be ready in 4 minutes, please.
Perfect.
I'm
Very
going
good.
to a place to be. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. So, unfortunately, Professor Wingfield, the president of the ASA, could not join us, but she sent a message, and I would like to ask Banana Pukayashka, who is active member of the ASA, but also vice president of the ISA for nationalization, to read her a short contribution. Banana, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is a message from Adia Wingfield. Thank you all for attending. I'd like to use my time to talk a bit about the impact Michael had on American Sociological Association and on many of its members. As you know, Michael was ASA president in 2004. His presidential address, concisely titled "For Public Sociology," made a deceptively simple case. Michael argued that the challenge of public sociology is to engage multiple publics in multiple ways. He went on to identify multiple typologies of knowledge and to contend that they each had a place, and it was essential for multiple forms of public sociology to take a co-equal place alongside the others. He noted, however, that the aspiration for public sociology is stronger and its realization ever more difficult, as sociology has moved left and the world has moved right. Michael wrote this in 2004. In the intervening years, we have seen just how much further right the world has moved. But as in so many other cases, his words are a guidepost and a lodestar for sociologists, because they challenge us to remember how much our work matters, how critical and necessary our discipline is, and how much we have to offer the world in which we live. I know this call has affected me as a sociologist and current ASA president. I tried to heed this call for public sociology in my own career as a social scientist, but also in thinking about how ASA can maximize opportunities to encourage and showcase public sociology. As with many other examples, Michael's words were prescient, visionary, and continue to shape the sociological landscape. End of Adia's message. And I want to add exactly 2 or 3 lines of my own to that, because unlike so many people gathered here, I wasn't a direct colleague of Michael in the sense of having worked with him. I didn't have the fortune of being his advisee. However, I've known him through ASA. I always met him outside the US, which is strange now that I think about it. I met him at multiple ASA conferences, and somewhere along the way, I knew that if I ever had a question, all I had to do was ask. Somebody before, I think it was Michelle Williams, said he brought each of us to the rest of us. And I think that is the memory that I wish to keep. But I also have been watching the outpouring of grief from every corner of the world. And what has made the most impression that I think will serve as a lesson is people who wrote about Michael outside the limelight. He was playing with their kids. He bought these neat gifts and took them to the park and things like that. And in each of those photos and each of those accounts, he's smiling. Sorry, I bet when he was confronting that immigration officer, he still had the twinkle in his eye and the pleasantness of his face, never mind how bad the situation was. And I think those, for me, are the lessons to emulate, how to be a human being, a real human being outside the limelight. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana, for sharing the word of the president of ASA in your own contribution, and definitely the smile is something we miss the most these days. Now, let me give the floor to Daisy Del Real, who is professor at the University of Southern California, but also the delegate of the ASA to the ISA, and so the main representative of the ASA in this meeting.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I want to echo so many things that have been said here. And I want to talk more about how Michael has impacted sociologists in the American Sociological Association based on what they've been sharing. And I think today we're here together to celebrate his remarkable legacy, not only as a scholar who reshaped the field of sociology, but also who demonstrated profound generosity of spirit that transcended academic hierarchies. His work inspired countless of individuals to think critically about society and to engage with the world through the lens of public sociology, but his contributions extend far beyond his published research or classroom lectures, because he embodied that spirit of that was collaborative, inclusive, and deeply humane. He was a mentor, but he also was a guide and a friend to many of his students and colleagues alike who have shared really long stories of his interactions with him. And many American sociologists have felt very accompanied by Michael. He had this rare gift for helping others develop their research projects, while at the same time treating them as equals, irrespective of their rank or status. Michael's humanity showed through his tireless efforts to support those facing some extreme barriers in the United States, like low-income workers and often undocumented students who might have otherwise been left behind. He did not just guide them academically, he helped them navigate their entire educational careers, from undergraduate studies to professorships. He became part of their lives, their families, forging bonds that went beyond the classrooms. It was not uncommon to hear stories of Michael visiting students' families, even their home countries, demonstrating his commitment to truly understanding and supporting those he worked for and he worked with. He was without a doubt a model of public sociology, not just in theory, but in action. And he lived the values he exposed, connecting the public, amplifying marginalized voices, and showing us all that the purpose of sociology is to make the world a better and more just place. And as we remember Michael today, let us carry forward his legacy of generosity, humility, and unwavering dedication to the betterment of society. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for allowing me to speak on behalf of others and to share this moment with you all.
Thank you, Daisy. And as I said, it's great that Michael is the one who brings once again the ASA and the ISA together. So thank you for being here. Now we'll give the floor to Ariel. If it's, are you there? It's okay now. Is it okay now? Maybe let's give her a few more minutes then, and give the floor then to Professor Laura Enriquez from UC Berkeley.
Thank you for inviting me to say a few words about Michael. The first time I met Michael was when I arrived at UC Berkeley in 1989 to start the postdoc that I had received to carry out under his mentorship. Since I'd been doing research on my own in Nicaragua for 4 years after completing my PhD, my expectations were that my postdoc would be a continuation of that for another 2 years, as I found my footing in US academia. Instead, I encountered a mentor who had lots to say about the work I was doing, and that lots to say was insightful, constructive, and pushed me in directions that were new and very interesting. When I subsequently joined the faculty at UC Berkeley, Michael, like it or not, shifted from being the mentor of my postdoc to being the mentor of my path toward tenure. And after that, he continued to be an intellectual sounding board for my research. He was incredibly generous that way, not only with his students, also with his colleagues. That generosity was also expressed in his advocacy for public sociology, focused on the critical issues of our time. His own public sociology ranged from explaining the intricacies of Marx's analysis of capitalism on our local progressive radio station to tackling the topic of privatization of public universities, marshaling data about the University of California system to make his case. And he made that case not only in scholarly venues, but also through his leadership in the Berkeley Faculty Association. Shifting back to a more personal note, I also had the good fortune to develop a friendship with Michael that deepened over the years. That friendship emerged from our shared vision of many things about the world, including the need for serious change in numerous aspects of it. He was a truly loyal friend. He listened, as many of you have said, he listened patiently, commiserated, laughed, teased, and thought through alternatives with me for addressing dilemmas of all sorts. And his profound kindness pervaded each of those actions. To say that he will be sorely missed is an understatement of the highest magnitude. I tell myself, though, that he would want us to use our feelings of sadness, loss, anger, and many other things to fuel our efforts to carry on the struggle that he engaged in for most of his life, the struggle for a more just world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this testimony, Professor Lauren, I guess. Let's see if Arish has joined us now.
Hi, yes, I'm with you.
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, dear community. Let me begin by apologizing for joining late. I was moderating a session in Haifa, in Israel, after the demonstration that Sari mentioned, for a book release about Gaza. I deeply wish to be with you from the very beginning, to share our pain together, and to not be alone in our mourning. But as I made my way here, I could almost hear Michael's voice reminding me, Arij, your work and commitment, your community and your people is important, especially now. Since October 7th, Palestinians in Israel have had their voices increasingly silenced. Michael understood the weight of these moments and the urgency of engagement. Even after his passing, his voice still resonates with me, guiding me, urging me to think, to write, to act, to ask what must be done. His presence, his insights, and his unwavering commitment continue to shape the way I navigate these difficult times. It's incredibly difficult to put into words the magnitude of loss I feel with Michael Burawoy's passing. He was not only a towering figure in sociology, but also a daily source of support, wisdom, and solidarity. Over the past 2 years, our conversations, sometimes brief check-ins, other times long and winding discussions. His generosity was boundless, his intellect razor sharp, and his commitment to justice unwavering. As a young sociologist, encountering his work on public sociology provided me with the tools to envision what an engaged and committed sociology could truly be. But what made his scholarship transformative was not just his theorization, it was how he lived it. He didn't see theory as detached from practice. Rather, he embodied the belief that those who theorized must also carry the practice. His unwavering commitment to public sociology was not merely intellectual, but deeply lived, shaping both the field and the possibilities of sociological engagement. Michael was politically engaged in the world he studied, something that not all scholars can say about themselves. I will never forget his characteristic modesty or the conversation we shared, exchanges that profoundly shape how I think about scholarship, activism, and responsibility. Meeting him after years of learning from his work reinforced how theory gains its deepest meaning when it carried into action. His solidarity with Palestine was not a passing stance, but a deeply rooted commitment, one that started to permeate his scholarship and his presence, especially since October 7th. His work and his life continue to shape who I am today, reminding me that the power of sociology lies in the ability not to just interpret the world, but to engage with it and shape it. It feels deeply symbolic that Michael's last published article was, "Why and how should sociologists speak out on Palestine?" A testament to his lifelong dedication to justice. It stands as testament to his relentless pursuit of justice. That was Michael, never retreating from difficult conversations, always pushing us to confront uncomfortable truths, and forever standing on the side of the oppressed and the colonized. Michael was not just a scholar, he was a builder of relationships, a weaver of community. He brought us together, creating a family bound by justice, care, and shared commitment to a decolonized world and a decolonized sociology. And lastly, a decolonized Palestine. With him, we shine together, our voices stronger, our resolve deeper, our sense of belonging to one another more profound. He nurtured a space where we could challenge, support, and grow with one another, where intellectual rigor and political commitment were inseparable from love and solidarity. The family he built among us is his legacy, and we will carry it forward. When we became close, I remember the exact moment he looked at me and said, "I'm Jewish, Arij. I hope you won't hate me." His words caught me off guard, but I immediately felt tears in my eyes. "I will love you more, Michael," I told him. "It's testimony for me that as a Jew, you continue the struggle for justice." I knew what it meant for him to do so and how deeply he believed in a true decolonial present and future. His family left Germany 1 minute before the Holocaust, he would tell me. His world and opportunities were shaped by that devastating history of the genocide of European Jewry. I think this history, even if tacitly and not explicitly, undergirded Michael's dedication to liberation and justice for all, and his view that academics can't insulate themselves from the world around them. Michael, I know how important it was for you that public sociologists speak up for Palestine, especially in the middle of genocide. This is your contribution to us, to continue the struggle for justice, to advance the anti-colonial fight for the world and for Palestine, and to insist on a future where we all, Palestinians and Jewish Israelis alike, can live in dignity and freedom in a decolonized world. Michael wrote in his last article, "For a sociologist, it's not enough to declare whose side you are on. and then move on. As sociologists, we embed our political commitments within a theoretical framework. In a period of post-coloniality, the systematic and transparent repression of Palestinians by Israeli state make it unique, compelling us to re-examine our own past, giving new salience to settler colonialism as the debris of decaying empires. Just 2 days before he was killed, I wrote to Michael asking, when would we speak again? His response was, always free for you, any day, anytime. What do you make of what is going on in the world? That was Michael, always ready to listen, to discuss, to debate, to challenge, and to support. And now the world and my world feels profoundly empty without him. Our department at Berkeley, the field of sociology, and the world lit large will have to grapple with this profound loss. It still feels inconceivable and impossible that Michael has left us. It will be our work then to keep Michael's legacy alive, to share stories and to teach his work, and most importantly, to model ourselves after his beautiful character. Michael, I will miss you more than words can express, but I promise you, we will carry forward the struggle, and we will keep your spirit alive in the fight for justice. Rest in power, my dear friend and teacher. Thank you.
Well, I think that this was a sad event, but also when we smiles and where we saw Michael in each and every of the speakers' intervention. I would like to thank you all for joining us. It was an event organized on such a short notice. Many thanks to the speakers who prepared beautiful testimonies in spite of a very difficult week for all of us after this sad and sudden news. And of course, there will be plenty of other tributes in ASA, in ISA, I'm sure in Berkeley and in many departments all over the world. But this was just a first one because we all felt that we had to come together to mourn him and to make Michael alive among us. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. I would like to thank particularly once again Cecilia and Maria for organizing the technical aspect of this meeting and working hard to do so in such a few days. And I hope to see you all very soon. Yes? I just had someone? No. Well, by then, I'll just close this meeting, but there's no way to, it is, what we saw tonight is a community in the US, in the world that Michael has built meetings after meeting, and this community will still alive and we will carry on his work.